You may not realize the force you've built within yourself. It's neither a monster nor a hero, but something far more dangerous, something the world cannot classify, predict, or fully grasp. You've become someone who can exist without depending on anyone, and in a society fueled by validation and approval, that makes you a threat. You've spent so much time alone that others no longer know how to interpret you. They confuse your silence for emptiness. But silence is not absence. It's a weapon. While most suffocate under the need to be noticed, validated, and approved, you've learned to move like a shadow, observing without being seen, collecting every detail while revealing nothing of your own. They exhaust themselves for attention, but you build quietly, without fanfare. They think the loudest voice wins. You've discovered the opposite, the one who listens without reacting, who speaks only when necessary, controls the entire game. You've watched how people expose themselves in contradictions, nervous laughter, and the pauses between their words. They think truth lives in what they say. You've learned it hides in what they avoid saying. While they rush to impress, you watch. While they explain, you observe. And when they finally reveal their cards, you act quietly, without theatrics or warning. The power you developed comes from something few dare to face: complete solitude. Where others see loneliness as punishment, you treated it as a crucible. It was war. You endured it through hunger, fear, and nights when your own mind tried to sabotage you. You survived. You walked through fire and emerged sharper, colder, more precise than they'll ever expect. In silence, you trained. You studied human behavior patterns, triggers, fragile egos. You stopped seeing the world as it appears and began seeing it as it truly is. You recognized smiles meant to manipulate, words crafted to deceive. You no longer believe the stories people tell about themselves. You study their behavior instead. You understand now that charisma isn't character. You don't guess, you know. Solitude built a mind that can't be fooled. You also learned the power of choice, deciding who enters your space, refusing to fill a void with meaningless company. You don't settle for connections that cost you clarity. A weak ally is more dangerous than an open enemy. False loyalty is more toxic than open hatred. You've stopped trying to convince people to stay, to understand, to walk with you. Dragging someone who doesn't want to move is slow self-destruction. You've paid the price for this awareness, but you don't regret it. There's no loneliness more suffocating than being surrounded by the wrong people. Now you guard your energy like a fortress. While the world celebrates exposure and demands performance, you've embraced something different: the power of anonymity. They crave recognition. You crave results. They want credit. You focus on impact. They want to be seen. You want to be remembered, not for noise, but for the silence before your arrival. You don't broadcast your steps or announce victories. The strongest strike is the one no one saw coming. Loneliness wasn't a setback. It was your training ground. Silence didn't mute you. It refined you. It didn't break you. It honed you. Like water carving rock, solitude sculpted you into something incomprehensible to the world. Every decision you make now comes from answering only to yourself. You no longer wait for permission. You don't explain your process. You own your time, your thoughts, your path. And now you hold something untouchable: real independence. Not the motivational slogan version, but true freedom, freedom from approval, validation, and noise. You've learned the secret few ever will. The one who needs no one, cannot be controlled. Nothing frightens others more than someone they cannot bend. They think you've always been this strong. They don't see the nights you battled your own demons, the wounds that taught you not to bleed in public. They don't know what it costs to become unreadable. Unreadable, that's your greatest advantage. When people can't read you, they fear you. They can't predict whether you're planning, resting, or preparing to strike. That uncertainty is your shield. That silence is your camouflage. While they guess, you calculate. While they react, you anticipate. They create stories to make sense of you, labeling you cold, distant, mysterious, because it's easier than facing the truth. And the truth is simple. You stopped playing their game. You stopped reacting as they wanted, stopped giving away your attention, your energy, your plans. They hate it not because you're cruel, but because you're free. Freedom, however, comes at a price. Most fail here. The price is silence. The price is patience. The price is being misunderstood. The moment you break your silence to prove yourself, you give them ammunition. The moment you feel the need to show you're working, growing, building, you fall into their trap. That's when ego takes over, and ego is the enemy of strategy. You've learned to tame your ego, to feed it just enough to survive, but never enough to lead. The ego wants recognition, applause, attention, but you no longer serve it. You use it. You harness its fire, but you never let it set your direction. This is where solitude transforms into strategic patience. Not idle waiting, but deliberate building in the shadows, planning in silence, acting only when the moment can't be ignored. You've seen what happens to dreamers who talk too soon. Their ideas die before they're born, but the silent operator emerges with something unstoppable, something no one saw coming. Time is now your weapon. You don't rush. You don't chase. You don't need the world to know your moves. While they spend their days posting, shouting, seeking applause, you're constructing something that doesn't need attention to survive. It only needs to be finished. That's where the real shift begins. You rise above the emotional chaos, consuming others. You don't get dragged into petty arguments. You don't respond to every insult. You don't waste energy defending your name to people who don't deserve to speak it. You've realized defending everything drains the strength needed for what truly matters. The one who fights every battle becomes a prisoner of those battles. The one who ignores the irrelevant becomes untouchable. Here, solitude stops being a stage and becomes your base of operations. You're not isolated. You're positioned like a sniper with a view of the entire field. You reveal yourself only when the shot is certain. You choose when to appear, when to retreat, when to let others think they've won, only to return when their guard is down. This isn't cowardice, it's calculation.
You've learned the deepest secret.
True power isn't constant domination. It's mastering when to act and when to wait. If you're always on display, you're predictable. If you constantly assert your power, you exhaust it. But when you reserve it, when you strike only when necessary, your power multiplies. They burn out trying to stay relevant. Every day, you move slowly, deliberately, invisibly, and by the time they notice, it's too late. In this space of silence and stillness, you see the world clearly. Most don't act, they react. Their decisions come from impulse, not planning. They speak because silence makes them uncomfortable. They move because stillness feels threatening. They attack out of fear, not strategy. You used to be like them, but no longer. Now you move at the pace of your plan. They move at the pace of their emotions. They rush, you pause. They panic, you observe. That difference is everything. The line between the manipulated and the master. With that control comes detachment. The day you stopped needing instant results was the day you became immune to manipulation. Praise or insult doesn't move you. Rewards or threats don't sway you. Detachment isn't apathy, it's immunity. You feel, but you're not ruled by feelings. You respond, but you're not driven by reaction. This leads to a new kind of strength, a rare luxury. Not the luxury of having more, but of needing less. Less validation, less distraction, less emotional noise. You clear space within yourself, like clearing a battlefield. Step by step, you remove the unnecessary until what remains is solid and precise. From that place, Every action hits harder because it's free from desperation or doubt. You gain clarity about people too. Without the fog of need, you see motives. You know who flatters and who means it, who lies and who fears being caught, who approaches with hidden intentions, and who offers loyalty without a price. This ability to read people becomes instinctive, and once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. Your solitude becomes more than silence. It becomes a laboratory for the mind. You don't just sit, you dissect yourself, not to wallow, but to improve. You study your flaws like a scientist studies weaknesses in a structure. You examine your fears, failures, and reactions. You eliminate behaviors that no longer serve your mission. You destroy the parts of yourself that once needed applause, that once feared judgment. You build from within, quietly, methodically. No one sees it, no one praises it, but the structure you're creating is unshakable. Most people won't understand this process. They need an audience to feel real. They need eyes on them to feel they exist. But you've evolved past that. You can sit in an empty room and feel whole. You don't need to be witnessed to be valid. You exist. You exist. And that alone is enough. You know the world doesn't reward noise. It rewards precision. You're building something so exact, so impossible to copy, that when it emerges, it will need no introduction. It will be undeniable. And this is where the danger begins. Not for you, but for them. You become a threat. You no longer seek to dominate, yet your existence itself becomes a threat. It unsettles people. It reminds them that they too could break free, if only they had the courage. But they don't. Your presence becomes a mirror reflecting their untapped potential, and the fear they'll never reach it. You, however, have already crossed the point of no return. You've burned the bridge back to comfort, mediocrity, and the herd. You no longer live by their rules, their rituals, their performances, or their craving for inclusion. You've left all of that behind. You don't orbit their expectations. You've become your own axis. They can't lure you with flattery or trap you with guilt. You've stepped out of the marketplace where identity is traded for approval. You don't negotiate your worth anymore. That makes you rare, unclassifiable, scarcity, and significance. You can't be boxed in, defined, or controlled. The solitude, once seen as weakness, has become your strategic advantage. You control access to yourself. You control what people know, and when they can't predict your worstness, your value increases. Scarcity creates significance. While others try to be everywhere, every conversation, every trend, their overexposure makes them disposable. You do the opposite. You are rarely seen, but when you appear, everything shifts. Not because you demand it, but because your presence carries weight. You've become the embodiment of scarcity, not just in action, but in being. And through that scarcity, you've built something few can ever replicate. Mystery as shield and sword. Mystery. It's both your shield and your sword. It protects you from intrusion and draws others without effort. It makes them speculate, decode, and anticipate. But they fail because you've made yourself unreadable by design. Mystery dies the moment you explain yourself. That's your discipline. Now, you don't explain, you don't justify, and you don't share your inner world with those who haven't earned it. Even the closest must earn your transparency. Every explanation is a key, and you hand it over only with intention, knowing it could unlock doors you never wanted opened. Elevated solitude. At this level, solitude no longer isolates you. It elevates you. You see the whole battlefield like a strategist above the chaos, not out of fear of the fight, but out of the need to understand the terrain before entering it. From that vantage point, you choose each move with precision. Every word, every silence, every appearance. You no longer play to win small skirmishes. You play to win the war. And in war, the strongest position isn't being everywhere. It's being unseen until it's too late. Not hidden by fear, but positioned by silence, like a force of nature gathering momentum, like a storm the sky forgets, until it breaks without warning. You let the world grow used to your absence, then you act. You strike when it's time. You strike not out of rage or ego, but because the moment is ripe, because your silence has done its work, because the forest no longer senses the predator, and that's when it's most vulnerable. You've reshaped your power, not in volume, but in timing. Timing, as you've learned, is everything. You don't move by the clock. Others obey. You've mastered the slow burn, the long game, the patience that breaks those who rely on momentum alone. An intelligent system. Your mind, trained in silence, has become more than a vessel for thought. It's now an intelligent system. You don't merely observe people, you study patterns. You don't just anticipate reactions, you predict them with precision. You store data quietly and connect threads others can't see. While they chase moments, you stack advantages. While they panic under pressure, you execute a plan you've already tested in solitude. And the most powerful part, you no longer need to move fast. You've stopped wasting energy on unnecessary motion. You let time do part of the work. Time is pressure for them. For you, it's leverage. The impatient drown in it, you ride its current with calm calculation. Time exposes the weak, reveals the fake, collapses false structures, and amplifies the solid. Through solitude, you've made yourself solid. The power to ignore. From here, you gain a new power. The power to ignore. You no longer fight every battle, chase every opportunity, or grab every glittering opening. You've learned some battles aren't meant to be won. They're traps, emotional ambushes disguised as victories. Winning them costs more than losing ever would. So you let them pass, not out of fear, but out of clarity. You choose your wars, your enemies, and your battles. The ability to walk away without a scratch is itself a form of dominance. The enemy who cannot tempt you cannot control you. This selective detachment changes you. You no longer treat power as an emotional reward. You treat it as a tool, functional, precise, unemotional. You don't prove you're powerful. You use power when it serves the mission. You don't intoxicate yourself with attention, nor let victory distract you from the next step. Everything hinges on preparation. You measure every decision by one question: does this serve the mission? When power becomes a tool, not a trophy, the game shifts. You're no longer at the mercy of luck, mood, or momentum. Event now hinges on preparation. And you've prepared in a place few dare to go, in silence, in shadows, where no one claps, no one watches, no one reassures you. That's where the strongest are made. And now you've become something the world doesn't quite know how to define. An enigma to some, a silent threat to others, a ghost gliding past noise and chaos, leaving only outcomes.
You didn't aim for this role.
Here's the truth. You never set out to be a villain, a mystery, or a mastermind. You wanted clarity. You wanted precision. You wanted peace through discipline. And that desire makes you unpredictable. In a world obsessed with visibility, you build in silence. In a world mistaking noise for strength, you've become fluent in quiet execution. By its nature, this challenges everything around you. You're not just a reminder of what people could be. You're a reminder of what they're afraid to become. Because it costs something, and you've paid it. Controlled access. You've burned the bridge to needing approval. You've left behind the need to be understood. You've stopped offering pieces of yourself for comfort. In that sacrifice, you've gained what few possess: the ability to control access to yourself. Not everyone sees you. Not everyone hears from you. Not everyone reaches you. Controlled access increases your value. The law of scarcity applies to people too. You're not everywhere. You're not always available. And that's why you're unforgettable. The blind spot. While others flood rooms with their presence, you've become the blind spot, the space no one monitors because they assume silence isn't dangerous. That assumption is their downfall, because when you move, you change the rules, not with noise, but with outcome. You've stopped playing for attention. You've started shaping the board itself. This is the discipline of power, not dominating with presence, but altering the terrain so your presence becomes destiny. An invisible architect. That's what you are now, an invisible architect of fate. Others wait for the perfect moment. You create it. So, others want to be remembered. You make yourself unforgettable by mastering the art of arrival. You provoke the moment when it matters most. You don't need to be seen beforehand. You appear when there's no option but to see you. And when that moment comes, they realize the plan was yours all. That's the power of design in silence. The final level. But even this isn't the final lesson. It's not enough to master silence or refine strategy. The final level is disappearing from yourself, to stop negotiating with your emotions, debating with your past, or waiting for permission from your own fear. You reach the point where you no longer react, even internally. You become observer and executor in one. You see life not as a journey to follow, but as a board to design. You are both player and piece. At that point, mastery no longer needs to be shown. It is simply lived. You no longer chase opportunities. You generate them. You don't wait for permission. You grant it to yourself. You don't seek an open door. You build the door and decide when it opens. What solitude really gave you? That's the final transformation. Not into something others admire, but into something they cannot define. Solitude didn't isolate you from the world. It gave you the blueprint to reconfigure it. You've become the architect of your own timing, movement, and war. No longer tied to external rhythms, no longer anchored by expectation. And if these words feel like something you've always known but never made, then you understand. This was never just about being alone. It was about learning to wield solitude like a sword. You've chosen your path. There's no turning back. Burn the scripts written for you. Reject applause meant to pacify you. Abandon the battlefield built for performance. Operate from your command center. Move in silence. Sharpen your weapons. Let them think you're dormant. Let them believe you've disappeared. Because when you rise, they won't be ready. And by then, it will already be too late.